Ever feel like you're stuck,
Hmm.
like just living the same chapter again and again?
Mm.
What if I told you that like the secret to breaking free and writing a more interesting life story is actually in storytelling itself?
Whoa, that's a pretty cool thought.
Right.
Most people just think of stories as like entertainment, but
Yeah,
it can be a really powerful way to grow personally.
you're totally right.
Mhm.
So in this deep dive, we're going to explore how using storytelling can help you discover yourself and make positive changes. We'll look at how understanding your own story, cultivating self-compassion, and shifting your perspective. All of that can help you beat challenges and reach your goals.
Yeah, and we'll dig into practical techniques you can use right away to shape a more fulfilling life.
Are you ready to become the hero of your own journey?
I am.
Let's dive in.
Let's go.
So first, understanding your own narrative.
Mhm.
Our lives are kind of like stories too, with settings and characters and all those important conflicts that keep things moving.
Oh, yeah, and it's those conflicts, those but moments that are key to growing.
Right.
Positive psychology teaches us that challenges and setbacks, those are actually chances to learn and become more resilient.
So it's not about like avoiding the tough stuff. It's about how we react to it.
Exactly. It's all about recognizing those therefore moments that come after those challenges. So the but might be getting laid off, but the therefore might be finding a new passion or starting a successful business.
Well, I like that.
It's in those therefore moments that we see how strong we are, how we adapt, and how much we can grow.
Okay. So we need to pay attention to those therefore moments and see them as like steps on our path. But how do we actually use that in our lives?
Well, one really helpful technique is journaling. It gives you space to think about those but moments, analyze how you reacted, and see what the therefore outcomes were. It's about seeing patterns in your life
Yeah.
and how you can use those patterns to make better choices in the future.
That's awesome. Now let's talk about self-compassion.
Yeah.
We all have that inner critic, that voice that loves to point out our flaws and focus on our mistakes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It can feel like a broken record playing the same negative stuff over and over.
And just like how a boring sentence structure makes writing dull, a harsh inner critic can really drain our energy and motivation.
That's a good point.
But cultivating self-compassion is like adding variety and rhythm to our inner dialogue.
So instead of all that negativity, we can choose to talk to ourselves with understanding and encouragement.
Exactly. It's about accepting our imperfections without judging ourselves and realizing that everyone makes mistakes.
Right.
We're all a work in progress, and self-compassion helps us face challenges with more resilience and with the belief that we can learn and grow from them.
It's like giving ourselves permission to be human, to make mistakes, but to get back up and keep going.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Self-compassion isn't about making excuses for our shortcomings. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we'd give a close friend.
Now let's shift gears a little and talk about perspective. In storytelling, content creators use story lenses to find new angles and keep things interesting. We can use that same idea in our own lives.
Totally. Think about a challenge you're facing right now. What if you try to see it from a different angle?
Okay.
Maybe you ask for different opinions, try a new approach, or reframe the situation in a more positive light.
So like if I'm feeling overwhelmed by a work project, instead of focusing on how big it is, I could break it down to smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly. Or you could get advice from a coworker who's handled similar projects before. Sometimes all it takes is a small shift in perspective to unlock a whole new understanding of the situation and open up possibilities we hadn't even thought of before.
It's like looking at a painting from different sides. Each view shows you something new and can change how you see the whole artwork.
That's such a good analogy. Just like with storytelling, trying different perspectives can help us find creative solutions, overcome obstacles, and ultimately write a more fulfilling story for ourselves.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yes. So welcome back to our deep dive into using storytelling for personal growth. Before we took a break, we were talking about how understanding our story, being kind to ourselves, and changing perspectives, all of that can help us create a better life story. But it's not enough to just understand these ideas. We need to actually use them.
Yeah, exactly. Because what's the point of all this knowledge if we don't actually use it in our lives? So how do we like bridge that gap between theory and action?
One really effective way is through visualization. Athletes use this all the time to improve. They mentally rehearse, like picturing themselves doing a perfect move, feeling the sensations, and even hearing the crowd cheer.
So they're basically making a mental movie of what they want to happen.
Yeah.
And that helps them do better in real life. But how can we use visualization for personal growth?
It's about creating a powerful vision of your future self. Imagine yourself achieving a goal, overcoming a challenge, or just handling a tough situation with grace and resilience. See yourself making the right choices, taking action, and embodying the qualities that will lead to success.
I'm starting to see how this connects to storytelling. It's like we're writing the script for our own lives, and visualization is the rehearsal.
You got it. And just like with any rehearsal, the more we practice visualization, the easier it becomes. It builds our confidence, helps us overcome limiting beliefs, and lets us step into the role of the hero in our own stories.
That's really powerful. But what about those times when we feel stuck? Like it's writer's block. The words just won't come, and we feel like we're not making any progress.
We've all been there. It's like hitting a wall on our personal growth journey. But the important thing is to remember that even the best authors have setbacks and times when they're not productive. It's a normal part of the creative process.
So how do we get unstuck? What can we do to overcome those creative blocks and keep our stories moving forward?
Sometimes the best thing is to step away from the story for a bit. Take a break from your routine, try something new, or get exposed to different perspectives.
So like looking for inspiration in unexpected places? Maybe I could try a new hobby, read a book that's different from what I usually read, or talk to someone who has a totally different viewpoint.
Yeah, exactly. Those experiences can spark new ideas, challenge what you think you know, and help you see things in a new way. It's like adding new colors to your palette, giving you more options to create a richer and more interesting story.
I really like that analogy. So it's not about forcing ourselves to have great ideas, but about creating the right environment for inspiration to happen.
Right.
And once we've recharged and gotten some new insights, we can go back to our story with renewed energy and a fresh perspective.
Exactly.
This is starting to make so much sense. We're not just watching our life stories happen, we're actively involved, shaping and reshaping the narrative as we go.
That's the key takeaway here. You are the author of your own story. You get to choose your perspective, overcome challenges, and create a narrative that reflects your values, your goals, and your unique journey.
That's great, but let's be honest. We don't always feel like the heroes of our own stories. Sometimes we feel more like the sidekick or even the villain. How do we handle those negative self-perceptions and embrace a more empowering narrative?
That's where self-compassion comes back in. Remember, it's about being as kind and understanding to ourselves as we would be to a good friend. If a friend was struggling with self-doubt, we wouldn't criticize them or tell them they're not good enough. We would offer support, encouragement, and remind them of their strengths and what they've achieved.
So we need to be just as kind to ourselves. Instead of focusing on what we see as flaws and failures, we can choose to highlight our strengths and celebrate our successes, even if they seem small.
That's it. It's about recognizing that we're all on a journey, and it's okay to make mistakes along the way. What matters is that we learn from them, pick ourselves up, and keep moving forward with self-compassion and determination.
I love that. It's a good reminder that we're all worthy of love and acceptance, even when we mess up. And by practicing self-compassion, we create a more supportive and nurturing environment within ourselves that helps us thrive and grow.
Now let's go back to journaling for a second. Remember, it's a great way to understand our story and see those but and therefore moments that shape our lives. But it can also be helpful for cultivating self-compassion.
Oh, really? I've always thought of journaling as a way to work through my thoughts and feelings, but I never really connected it to self-compassion.
Think of your journal as a safe place to have a kind conversation with yourself. It's where you can challenge those negative thoughts about yourself and replace them with more positive and supportive messages.
So instead of dwelling on my mistakes, I can use my journal to acknowledge them, learn from them, and give myself words of encouragement and understanding.
Exactly. You can use your journal to remind yourself of your strengths, your achievements, and how far you've come. It's about creating a written record of self-compassion that you can look back on whenever you need a boost of confidence or a reminder that you're worthy.
This is starting to sound a lot like changing our personal narratives, shifting from a story of self-criticism and doubt to a story of self-acceptance and empowerment.
You're absolutely right. It's a powerful reminder that we have the power to choose the stories we tell ourselves. We can choose to focus on our flaws and failures, or we can choose to highlight our strengths and celebrate our successes.
So it's not about pretending the challenges aren't there, but about approaching them with a more compassionate and empowering mindset.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that setbacks are a normal part of life. And how we react to those setbacks is what truly defines who we are and shapes our future.
This is such an important message. It's so easy to get caught up in negative self-talk and forget how strong and resilient we are.
It's a struggle for a lot of people, But by using the principles of storytelling in our lives, we can better understand our own stories, cultivate self-compassion, and write a more fulfilling and empowering next chapter.
This has been such an insightful conversation. We've covered so much, from understanding our narratives to being kind to ourselves and using visualization to create the outcomes we want. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I'd like to explore one more aspect of storytelling: the idea of finding our voice and sharing our stories with others. So we've been talking about using storytelling to understand ourselves better and create a more fulfilling life story. But what about sharing those stories with other people?
Oh, that's a great point. Sharing our stories can be so powerful both for us and for the people who hear them. It's a way to connect with others on a deeper level, to inspire, to offer support, and to build a sense of community.
Yeah, but putting ourselves out there like that can be scary. It makes us vulnerable, right?
For sure, it takes courage to share our stories, especially the parts that are messy or imperfect. But that's also where the real power comes from. When we share our vulnerabilities, we give others permission to do the same. We create a space for authenticity and genuine connection.
I see how that could be really transformative, not just for the person telling the story, but for the listener too. It's like starting a ripple effect of empathy and understanding.
Exactly. Think about a time when you heard someone's story that really spoke to you. Maybe it was about overcoming something difficult or pursuing a passion, or even just a story about making a small but meaningful connection with someone. How did that story make you feel?
It definitely makes you feel less alone. Like, I'm not the only one who feels this way.
Right, and that's the amazing thing about storytelling. It has the power to break down walls, build bridges, and remind us that we're all connected in this human experience.
Okay, so what are some tips for sharing our stories in a way that's both genuine and impactful?
Well, first, be yourself. Don't try to force your story into a certain mold or try to tell people what you think they want to hear. Share your story in your own voice with your own unique perspective.
So it's okay if my story doesn't have a happy ending, or if it's still a work in progress.
Absolutely. Life isn't always perfect, and neither are our stories. In fact, it's often the messy, imperfect stories that connect with people the most because they feel real and relatable.
That makes sense. What else should we remember?
Focus on the emotional truth of your story. What were you feeling during those important moments? How did those experiences change you? Let your emotions guide your storytelling, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable.
Because vulnerability is strength, right?
Exactly. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to deeper connections and more meaningful interactions.
Okay, I'm starting to get excited about sharing my story, but where do I even start?
Start small. Share your story with a trusted friend or family member, or write it down in your journal to process your thoughts and feelings. The more you practice sharing your story, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
That's really helpful advice. So to wrap things up, what are some key takeaways we can all use to start writing a more compelling and fulfilling story for ourselves?
Okay, first, embrace your own narrative. Recognize that your life is a story with its own unique characters, settings, and conflicts.
And remember those but moments we talked about. They're not obstacles, they're chances for growth and change. Look for those therefore moments that come out of those challenges, the lessons you learn, the resilience you gain.
Yes, and cultivate self-compassion. Be as kind and understanding to yourself as you would be to a good friend. Acknowledge your imperfections without judging yourself, and celebrate your strengths and achievements no matter how small.
And shift your perspective. Experiment with different story lenses to see your challenges and opportunities in a new light. Seek out different opinions, try new approaches, and don't be afraid to reframe things in a more positive way.
And finally, share your story. Find your voice. Embrace your vulnerability and connect with others on a deeper level through the power of storytelling.
This has been such an incredible deep dive into how transformative storytelling can be. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey and for sharing your insights and expertise.
It was my pleasure.
And to everyone listening, we encourage you to embrace your stories, share your experiences, and keep writing those compelling and fulfilling next chapters.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep writing your story.